Organized YouTuber, by the way. Let's get that there. You good? I think you're good. Yeah. Super professional. Know exactly what I'm doing at all times. Yep. Totally organized. Totally have my life together. Nothing to see here. Move along. That's good. Got my water, got my coffee. Yeah, oops. Okay. So I am give at least a few minutes. Not many people are in here, but I will give you all a few minutes to trickle in, and then we will get started. Which also works out well because I need to get out of here and get on the highway without dying. I'm just stopped by Starbucks to grab some coffee before I hit the road, and this particular shopping center, the traffic flow pattern was designed by someone of questionable intelligence, and the combined IQ of the people who drive here is worse. So, you know, what could go wrong? What's up, Daniel? Thanks for stopping by, man. So, right now I am just leaving Raleigh/Cary, headed out to Greensboro for a tournament tonight. It's a doubles tournament. It's a doubles eliminator tournament, which is pretty cool, pretty fun format. It's a triathlons in Greensboro. So I'm bowling this with Matt Hogan, a pretty good friend of mine, who have bowled one of my summer leagues. He and I have been teaming for that, and he's also the fifth man for one of my fall leagues teams this year. He's a lefty, I'm a righty, and we both strike about 16 bajillion times a game in this building. So honestly, taking two scratch guys who average 240 plus and putting them together in a doubles tournament where the handicap is 90% of 230, yeah, Merry Christmas to us. Honestly, if we both show up and have a solid day, we have a very good chance to win this tournament, which is kind of cool to think about even coming into it. It's like, if we both show up and do our jobs, we will finish in probably the top. It's capped at 48 teams, I think, and like, if we both show up and do our jobs, there's no way we don't finish top 10, honestly, unless we just catch a horrible pair or something for qualifying. So yeah, the format is bowl 3 games, cut to the top half, pinfall resets. Top qualifier gets an automatic berth in the finals, and other than that, everybody else bowls 2 more games. The top third of the remaining bowlers also advance to the finals, where the remaining bowlers pinfall resets again, and then 2 more games, and the remaining bowlers have bowl 2 more games. Everybody who makes it to the third and final round cashes, and so that final round is just bowl 2 games for final cashing position. So it should be a pretty fun format. They run these tournaments pretty regularly as singles tournaments in this same format. I've actually, one of my very few singles tournament wins came in this format 2 summers ago, I want to say. Ended up shooting 277 300 in the final round for the win. So 577 for 2 games is kind of hard to beat no matter how many pins you got. So I made it easy. So, yeah, I guess now that I'm on the highway, I'll kind of start talking through kind of the journey a little bit, I guess, and kind of what I've experienced and how I'm feeling right now. And I guess if y'all have any questions or anything in particular you want to know about, or kind of something I touch on you want me to dig into a little deeper, I'll be keeping an eye on chat as best I can while I'm driving. So just fire away and I'll answer when I can. I'm going to actually close that. Maybe that'll help with the lighting a little bit. Actually, no, wait. Here. Yep, that's a little better. All right, that'll work. So I think I touched on some of this in the equipment testing stream that I did about a month ago up at Before the First Frame in Henderson, where I had a bunch of stuff was testing a lot of new motive stuff that I drilled against some of my older equipment that I had been using from Storm Roto Global. And so essentially what I had, so to start with kind of the why, is it felt like I was struggling to create consistent, predictable ball motion when the lanes weren't perfect, for lack of a better term. My shapes, while they looked really nice, and when they struck a lot. When they didn't, even with the smoother, more predictable stuff, like my Phase 2, my True Nano Pearl, my Idle Synergy, my Zen, balls like that, it felt like I was, to say it in short, it felt like I was getting six too much, especially moving pair to pair in tournaments. I was getting on decent shots. If I was off by just a little bit, my misses weren't 8s and 9 counts. It was split 6, or a lot of washouts. It felt like I was shooting at a lot more multi-pin leaves on second balls than I realistically should have been, given my execution level. That was essentially kind of where this whole conversation started in the first place. And this could realistically be traced back to, this line of thought could be traced back to Swiss Trios last year, which I streamed that on my channel, both that with Riley Patton, aka Swift Cookies. He's the two-hander who does a lot of the motive videos for the Bowling Fix, which if you want a higher ref perspective on motive stuff, his videos for them are fantastic. Riley's a really good kid, really gifted bowler, probably one of the best two-hander releases I've ever seen, period. And that includes literally everybody on the PBA Tour. Good dude, strikes a ton, throws it really well. So I bowled with him, and then Bo Peterson, who I think either made a regional stepladder recently or won his first regional, I forget which. He bowls a lot of Midwest stuff. They both live in Kansas. But I bowled with Bo and Riley for Swiss Trios last year, which is, the format for that was 12 games of trios across 2 days. You're moving to a random pair every single game, and it was on a sport pattern. We were on, it was a Kegel Middle Road version 1, I believe, which was 39 feet, 4-1, and a pretty good amount of volume. And the place I found success that weekend, and this is kind of where the wheels started turning for me, was we bowled 12 games, and I think 11 of those I used a Phase 2, an IQ Tour Solid, or an Axiom Pearl. All of those are pretty, strong, smooth, stable pieces, where it's just the whole idea is beat up the pocket, fill your frames, and hope for the best. Versus using some of the other stuff, like I've used my Idle Synergy a ton. I've got several honor scores with that ball just in the last 3 or 4 months. But when it wasn't working, it felt like I was maximum penalty way too much. And even when I bowled the regional down in Myrtle Beach back in August, or not August, when was that? That was in May, down at Myrtle Beach Bowl. I had a couple of really solid games, and the other ones I was getting like 6 counts. Like my multi-pins, I think I left more multi-pins than single pins in 5 games, or 6 in the 6-game block, which was that was a real kind of smack upside the head, metaphorically speaking, of, my process is wrong. If I'm throwing it decently well and my results are that far off, I'm missing something else here. And so realistically, even tracing it back to the trips I made to Kansas City back in March, and especially the one in April, I remember there's another guy, for those of you who hang out in Luke Rosedal's server, and hear him talk about some of the really good guys out that way. One of the names you'll hear sometimes is Dylan Burns. I believe he lives down in the Wichita area. He's a motive staffer, and at one point I think he had the 9-game scoring record. He shot 2470 for 9, pretty much exclusively with a Jackal Ghost. And Dylan and I are not too dissimilar in a lot of ways, where we both have a pretty good amount of rev rate, pretty good amount of ball speed, and we like to hook the lane. Granted, the way we do that is a little bit different, but there's still a lot more in common than there are differences. And so I've been kind of studying his bowling for a while, as kind of a means of getting better, especially when we're in the same building for some of the Kansas City tournaments. And so there was one particular day. It was the singles tournament at Royal Crest. This was on the Saturday of Easter weekend. It was an 8-gamer on Kegel Chromium, and I think I outstruck Dylan for an 8-game block, and he beat me by over 100 pins because he missed the pocket less than I did, essentially. And so, essentially, I was yes, when I was on, I was striking a lot, but when I wasn't, I split and left, multi-pin leaves a lot more than he did. And that costs you multiple ways. That costs you in count on your first ball, but then, splits usually mean opens, unless it's like a 3-10 or something. And when you're opening that much more, and I didn't even open a ton, considering it was on a challenge pattern. Chromium is like 6-1, I think. 6-1, 6-1, 7-1, something like that. It can play pretty soft, but it's not a brain dead pattern. So like you still have to think, you still have to manage your ball motion right in order to score well. And so I felt like I had done pretty well that day, and I shot plus 150 for 8, I think, somewhere in that range. And then I look up and Dylan shot plus 260. And I was just like, hello? What did I miss here? And so I go back and I really start studying and watching, because Dylan was on the pair next to me for the entire block. So I got almost all of his block on my stream. So I had a really, really, really good kind of A to B reference of, here's what I did. Here's what another guy did, who was a pretty decent reference point for me in terms of general lane play strategy. And let's just sit down and study the crap out of this and figure out where the gaps are. Essentially, that was kind of the conclusion I came to. And the couple weeks after that was, I went back and studied it, and I realized that if you shoot at 4 total multi-pin spares in 8 games, you're gonna do pretty well. And that was literally exactly what happened to Dylan. He hit the pocket a ton. His misses were very simple, and because of that, his opens were very few and far between. I think he opened like 2 or 3 times total in an 8-game block, and one of those was just a freak hit. It was like a big 4 minus the 6 pin, or no, it was a 4-9-10, I think, but it was some really weird split. But the point being is, that's kind of where this whole thing started. I felt like I needed to find ways to blend things out to control the pocket and to have more predictable ball motion, because the flashy, boomy shapes, through the astrophysics a ton over the past couple of years, for example, those shapes look pretty. When you hit the pocket, they strike a ton. When you don't, you get punished more often. And that was essentially what I was trying to combat against. And so I ended up drilling quite a few more balls just in the few months after that. I drilled 2 spec balls, which I've still used those sometimes. Drilled another IQ Tour Nano Pearl. I might have drilled another Phase 2, I don't remember. Drilled 2 realities with different setups. Through my Rubicon some, a pinned down Rubicon that I used some later last year. So I tried a bunch of different stuff, and essentially I felt things getting better, but at the same time it still felt like I was fighting the friction response a little bit. And given that I wasn't using fast response balls within the context of the Storm catalog, and given the fact that I wasn't using quick and whippy layouts, and my surfaces I wasn't going to do anything crazy either. Maybe lane shined all the way down to 2,000 or 3,000 grit, depending on the ball and the context. And it felt like, especially for the stronger equipment, I had quite a few. I loved the Axiom, and particularly it was one of the balls that I liked to throw, but at the same time, it just tended to kind of lock up a lot on friction, for lack of a better term. So it either, see friction and dig in instantly, or it would just kind of not quite see the spot right and miss another 3 or 4 feet past the spot. And that miss long is something that makes me extremely uncomfortable in terms of ball motion. If I feel like I have to protect against the miss long with physical game adjustments, that's when I start to baby it. That's when my tempo gets out of whack. That's when things kind of go off the rails for me, and I know that. And so I was trying a bunch of stuff. I legit probably drilled 10 balls just in the first 6 months of this year, trying to kind of run this idea down and figure out what to do. I pretty much tried everything I could think of. Talked with several people that I trust whose eyes are really, really good in terms of ball motion and arsenal building, and tried some ideas from them as well. And it honestly didn't feel like it was clicking. So I ended up trying a Jackal Ghost and a Venom Shock, just because my theory was that it was a cover stock issue, and the covers were just a little too fast on friction, for lack of a better term. I couldn't get my ball to blend and tumble and roll all at the same time off the end of the pattern in a lot of situations. I could see that that's kind of the shape I wanted to make. I very much like to see this shape, this idea of my ball picks up and it makes one continuous kind of climbing, rolling type motion from where it starts the hook phase all the way through the pins. That's honestly, that's part of why I like the phase 2 so much, and why I've thrown that ball so much over the past, however long, almost 4 years that it's been out on the market. Actually, more than that, I think. Long time. However long the phase 2's been out, I've thrown it a ton. And that continues to be small. But even that was kind of I couldn't quite put a finger on it. It didn't feel right. It felt like I was fighting everything. And so I ended up testing out the Ghost and the Shock, and they were able to read the fronts and the mids in a way that they would pick up and read the spot correctly front to back. So I didn't feel like I had to worry too much about the miss long. But while they picked up early, they didn't roll early. And so that kind of helped me blend out my down lane motion a little bit more. And so I had this kind of very different feel, different idea of how to manage ball motion. And that kind of sealed the deal. And that was what prompted me to resign from my contract, honestly, is I saw these shapes that I had never seen before, and I saw what I was capable of doing with them. It's kind of, I sort of knew what questions I had been asking. I couldn't find the answers, and all of a sudden the questions were answered. Is kind of the best way I can think to describe it. So that's a little bit of the why, the why of how I got here. So I guess now, what time is it? 4:20? Okay, cool. Doing good on time. So I guess now I'll just kind of talk briefly through what I've drilled since then. Not everything has been a home run, unfortunately. Some of it I'm still trying to figure out. Some of it is probably going to get sold with very few games on it, just because it didn't click, it didn't make sense, but that's kind of how it is sometimes. So, the first 2 balls were the Venom Shock and the Jackal Ghost. The Venom Shock is at 4 inches by 70 VAL, so that puts the pin below my bridge. And the Ghost is at 50 by 5 by 45. That puts the pin above my middle finger and kicks the mass, I think, about 2 inches right of my thumb. So the Ghost is a kind of a mid-strength, decently responsive type of layout, and the Shock is just a really smooth and blendy layout. And so the reason I set those 2 up like that is I wanted the Ghost to be able to kind of pick up and roll through the pins. If I needed traction, but also a very defined roll through the pins, something that I could get a little more forward if I needed to. And then this Shock is like the blend master, essentially. And I wanted something really smooth and round, and essentially one giant banana shape-wise down lane. And so going pin down really helps extend that hook phase a little bit more. which then, okay, but it did that while still rolling through the pins. And I've never felt like I'm fighting to get any of the stuff to roll through the pins, and if I am, that just means I'm not using enough cover, essentially. So that's been something that's really cool. So the Ghost and the Shock have been locked in the bag since day one. I'm actually I just drilled another shock earlier this week, and that is the bag that I keep in Luke and Angel Rosdahl's basement. Just because it's a trusted ball that works on a lot out there. I want that bag in particular to be equipment that I really trust and can get use out of on a variety of conditions. So it definitely fits that mold very well. So from the Ghost and the Shock, the next two I drilled were a VIP Affliction and the first Venom Recoil. Yes, I said first for a reason. The Affliction is a very, very strong, very smooth, tumbly, like almost like lumbering type of symmetrical ball. If you've seen the Forged Flare, the candy corn ball that Motive makes, the VIP Affliction to my eye very much looks like that same type of shape idea, just not quite as ludicrously strong on the cover stock side. And so I drilled the Affliction 4.5 inches by 70 VAL. Puts the pin below my middle finger, so essentially takes the pin from above my middle finger to below my middle on the Ghost to below the middle finger on my Affliction. This was intentional because I wanted my Affliction to kind of be a rounder, slightly more surface and slightly earlier cover, but also definitely a lot rounder on friction than the Ghost is. I wanted this to be kind of my really strong, really smooth ball. And then the recoil, my idea with that was that I wanted something where the shock, like I had this kind of stack with the Affliction and the Ghost, where if I needed a big cover, one of those two is going to strike. Just kind of pick whether I need smooth, symmetrical shape or a quicker, slightly more responsive ASIM. But they're very, very close in terms of total traction created and total hook. So they're essentially shape complements to each other. I wanted that same kind of idea with something I could pair off on my shock. So the first recoil that I drilled up, drilled at 55 by 4.5 by 70. So that puts the pin in the same spot on my recoil as my Affliction and kicks the mass bias over, I think, to pretty much be on my VAL and about 3 inches from my thumb. And so what I experienced with the recoil, I actually shot my career high 4-game block with that ball almost immediately. I shot 278, 257, 289, 278 for 1102, which is the first time I'd ever broken 1100 for 4, and blew my previous personal best away by about a mile. So I knew there was some promise to the ball, but at the same time, it felt like it was a little too kind of heavy forward, slow, couldn't really make the corner on a lot of situations, unless I had a lot of early friction that I could use to kind of just make it start up and just kind of flop through the pocket. Unless I had that, it was very difficult to get to strike with. And so that was one that I kind of tabled from the core tournament bag for a while. So this is still 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I tinkered with it some more. I took it out to leagues, but it was not one that was getting first looks in tournament situations by any stretch of the imagination. There were 2 others. I've drilled 2 shiny balls from Motive. Drilled a Fatal Venom, thinking that the idea there was I wanted a ball that would get down the lane and respond a little more on friction versus my Venom Shock. And so I drilled a Fatal Venom, which is the Infusion Pearl cover, which is the same cover as the Supra and the first VIP ball, the EXJ. It's that same cover on top of the gear core from the Venom Shock. So I drilled that one with the same layout as my Venom Shock, and then a couple weeks later I ended up drilling a Ripcord Velocity at 4.5 by 70, which is my VIP Affliction layout. Honestly, neither of those were all that successful. The Fatal just kind of got down the lane and was too slow down lane for how long it went. It's probably the best ball I've ever owned, period, in terms of being able to stand on top of dirt and know that my ball's not going to overhook on me. which is a really cool trait to have. Really just lets me catch all of it and not worry about the ball jumping, which is pretty fun. But at the same time, the times that I was looking to use a ball like that are when I can't get my shock down the lane, no matter how far left I get. And that situation doesn't happen very often, and so that's where I got stuck. I was getting 9 too much from left because it was too slow for the angles I needed to play with it. The other shiny ball I drilled, and I actually took this to Springfield with me a couple weeks ago when I was out there for the Kansas City tournaments, was a pin down ripcord velocity. And it's not a ball that I have liked all that much, if I'm being honest, at this point in time. It reminds me a lot of the original MVP or the Phase 3, kind of in that same general shape idea, where it's this heavy, very, fairly clean, but very, very heavy rolling, shuggy, almost forward type of shape off the end of the pattern. And there's a traffic jam. Cool. And so the velocity, and kind of reflecting on that, and I'm not sure if I've referenced this on YouTube, but this right here, this little Moleskine notebook, that's my bowling journal that I've been using. I started using that actually while I was in Las Vegas, to kind of use it as a mechanism to kind of condense some of my thoughts of ball motion, equipment, how I'm playing the lanes, what I'm seeing, what I did well, what I could have done better. And kind of as I was reflecting back last week on I think it was about a week ago, on what I've been seeing reaction-wise and what I needed to, and what I was looking for, is the velocity kind of helped me realize that what I really like to see above all else is, and I think I mentioned this earlier with the Phase 2, and this is why this makes so much sense, is I want to see my ball pick up and just make one continuous shape from when it picks up to when it goes through the pins. And what I saw with the ripcord velocity reminded me a lot of all of the MVPs that I've thrown, and a little bit of the Phase 3 as well, where you can see it wanting to wind up. You can see it saying, okay, I'm ready to go. Let's pick up and drive. And then it just goes another 3 or 4 feet before it actually does anything. And that shape, while it looks really, really cool, and there are some situations where it does strike with devastating effect, I struggle very much to get that to read the lane in one consistent motion, if that makes sense. And that was kind of where I struggled with that. Saw a question. Sorry, Big E. This was about 8 minutes ago, so apologies. So as a free agent, do I have to wait for releases, or do I still have early access to other lines? I've got a few staffer friends who I will phone in favors from time to time, but this is all just buying on my own. Actually, aside from the ripcord velocity, I haven't bought any ball on release since I went free agent. It's all been, and this is kind of a change in mentality for me, is I'm not trying to chase the new shiny hotness, if that makes sense. Like I just want to strike, and I'm going to get whatever I think will give me the best chance to strike. So the velocity I did pre-order, everything else was already released by at least a month before I drilled it. That's kind of a mentality shift, as I've been able to hone in a lot on the shapes I like to see, like I'm talking about. I want to see the ball pick up and just make one strong, consistent motion, strong, continuous motion in one piece from when it picks up to when it goes through the pins. And if I don't see that, then I'm probably not going to be comfortable with the ball. So that's kind of why I've not been particularly enamored with the ripcord velocity, if I'm being completely honest. So then other stuff I've drilled, so I knew pretty quickly that I had a really, really good core with the Affliction, the Ghost, and the Shock, and those three have gone literally everywhere with me since I resigned. Sorry. So then the piece of the puzzle that I've been trying to solve since then and you'll kind of see the path of this as I talk through some of these other balls that I've drilled, is trying to solve the bottom half of my bag and find some good options there for when I need that kind of alternate shape to that kind of big three that's really good at reading a lane early and being stable down lane. So from that big three, and then the once I kind of concluded that the fatal was not the weak ball I was after, that's kind of where things kicked off for round two of this journey, so to speak. So the other balls that I've drilled since then in order have been an Intel Solid, which I have found on Facebook, a Hustle PBR, another Venom Recoil, and an Intel Pearl SE. So I'll kind of, three of those are kind of all trying to solve the same thing, and then there's a second recoil, which I'll address as its own separate thing. So the Hustle PBR was 4 inches by 70, which is the same setup as my shock. So I was essentially targeting similar core strength, maybe a core that gets down the lane a touch more, plus a cleaner, slightly more responsive cover. And so that's kind of how I perceived the VTC S20, I think, as the cover on that, on the PBR, and I actually shined it up a little bit as well. Just a 4,000 pad on high speed on a spinner, and just kind of let it lane shine from there. Definitely felt like an upgrade on the Fatal Venom once I threw it, but it was still kind of fighting that same idea of it just got down there a little too far and was a little too weak on the friction at the same time to be able to respond from the angles that I was needing the ball to respond from. So then after that, drilled up the Intel, which was closer, and when I drilled this, I knew I was on the right path, but I knew it wasn't the answer. So the Intel, so remember, I've got my Ghost that is the more responsive of my strong side, of the strong chunk of my bag, and that's pinned up. Then the Affliction is the smoother half of that, and that's pinned down. That's above, below my middle finger. And the shock was the smoother half of what I kind of wanted to be my mid-strength chunk of the bag. And so then the theory here is do that same move of pin below bridge to pin above bridge, which is about 4.5 by 30 to 35 on the VAL. So I did that on the Intel, and it felt closer. And when I saw how the core was transitioning, I knew I was on the right track here, but it was still just a little... The Intel, like, it's a ball that I had one before when it was originally out and in production, and I really liked it. It was one of the balls. That was one of the balls I had to give up when I first signed my contract 2 summers ago, and that was one where it kind of, when I drilled it again, it felt close, but it still felt a little too much of just kind of like a nuanced step off of my Venom shock, to the point where if I could strike with the Intel, I could probably strike with the Venom shock, and that just felt like a little too much overlap. And so then I kind of tabled that idea. By this point, I was gearing up for a UBA Battle Bowl, and so I didn't want to drill anything else and potentially complicate my life further than it had to be. And so I ended up taking a lot to Battle Bowl with me gear-wise. I think I took 11. I had see if I can remember it all. Crux Prime, VIP Affliction, Pro Motion, Jackal Ghost, Venom Shock, Intel, Hustle PBR, UFO Alert, Idle Synergy, Venom Recoil, and a spare ball. I think that's all 11. I think it is. Yeah, I had 10 plus a spare ball with me. That was, honestly, Battle Bowl was great. I learned a ton. I think I bowled like 35 games for score in 4 days. And I think of those, all but like one were with Crux Prime, VIP Affliction, Pro Motion, Venom Shock. Like those 4 were or I think I threw 5 or 6 games with the recoil in there as well. Those balls were the workhorses, and it wasn't my best weekend on the lanes, but I felt like things were really starting to come together, and I was able to have some answers. So I came back from that, And the last two that I've drilled were the Intel Pearl SE and then a second Venom recoil. The Intel Pearl SE I drilled pin above the bridge, same setup as the Intel, and I'm running it at a 2000 grit sanded surface. The idea here was, this was probably a year and a half ago, where I was running a IQ Tour Emerald pin up and scuffed pretty aggressively, like 2000 grit or so. And I had a lot of success with that. I actually used that ball when I won the UBA Southeast Heavyweight belt the first time. And so the idea here was the Intel Pearl SE is that same general idea, you know, cleanish, fairly responsive cover stock, shiny pearl on top of a low RG, lower differential symmetrical core that's pretty rolly. And so I wanted a ball. The theory here was that this would just get down the lane a little bit more than the Intel Solid, but definitely have more kick on friction, but not lose much on the stability department because of the surface. And that ball has worked out really, really well so far. I just drilled it on Wednesday. I've only thrown 2 or 3 games with it, but the way it responds to friction is like a perfect step down ball where my shock is just a little too early and a little too slow and not able to kick off the corner. And then I can just go right into my Intel Pearl SE and I'm back off to the races. The other ball that I drilled was the second Venom recoil. This is also pin above the bridge, and I put the mass bias in my thumb. So that's 70 by 4.5 by 35, I think is the layout I did there. And so what I have now is I have these 2 stacks of VIP Affliction, Jackal Ghost, and Venom Shock, Venom Recoil, where it's essentially kind of a nuanced shell down from the symmetrical to the asymmetrical option, but the asym core helps it to pick up and roll a lot quicker once it does read, and that kind of helps it drive through the pins a little better. Just kind of, so I've got kind of 2 offset shapes in very similar strength brackets, very similar traction brackets. And so those have been working very, very well. And then the Intel Pearl SE is my kind of, you know, weak, smooth ball that'll still kick on friction when I need to. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, and that's what I've got in the trunk right now on the way to this tournament is Affliction, Ghost, Shock, Recoil, Intel Pearl SE, and then my spare ball. And that's all I've got with me. And it finally actually feels like I've got a really, really good bag that fits this idea of how I'm blending the pattern now. And yeah, I feel really confident with it. What's up, Jesse? No, I did not sign with Motive. I am not signing with anybody, nor do I have a desire to sign with anybody. I very much just want to go out and bowl at this point. I actually just kind of talking through my bag for the weekend as I've got 5 Motive balls, including my spare ball. I drilled a, what is it, the Agent Sniper. I just drilled that as a spare ball just for kicks and giggles. So I've got that with me this weekend. But then I've also got the Radical Intel Pearl SE. So I want, like, I would be doing myself a disservice by not throwing other equipment. And by that same token, if I were to sign with somebody else, the only way that happens is if somebody throws a whole lot of money at me and I'm not. All right, are we good? I think we're good. Sorry about that. I hope this is still working. Someone in the comments could say, yes, we're good, or no, we are not good. That would be appreciated. Technology is stupid. Anyways, short answer, no, I have not signed. Not chasing a contract with anybody, don't want a contract. I'm happy being a free agent. It means I can wear Under Armour polos when I go bowling, which are ridiculously comfortable. And I'm okay with that. Missed it on the intro. What tournament are you headed to? There is a handicap doubles eliminator tournament tonight on the house shot at Triad Lanes in Greensboro. Bowling that with a good friend of mine, Matt Hogan. He's a lefty, I'm a righty, and we both average over 240 in this building. So realistically, about a 485-ish team average in a tournament where the handicap is 90% at 230. I like our chances, especially given that he's a lefty. So should be a lot of fun. Both 3 cut to the top half, pins reset, bowl 2 more, cut to the top third, pins reset, bowl 2 more for final caching position. Should be a lot of fun. All right. Yeah, sorry about that, Jesse. Yeah, internet data issues. I'm not sure what's going on. My phone's dumb. Other questions. Daniel K, did I find more issues with blending on all patterns, house shots included? Yes. It was a systemic issue on both house shots and sport patterns. It felt like I was having to outbowl the competition, just like I felt like I had to be too perfect on house shot to strike, is what it came down to. And then on sport patterns, I was just searching for answers and coming up with 6 way too often. That was kind of where this whole thing started. It was essentially, it was across the board, honestly. Is when I got locked in, I was really locked in, but when I wasn't locked in, the ability to keep myself in play was not there. With what balls? Pretty much the entire Storm catalog. I mean, I've got one of almost everything in the catalog right now at home. Everything from, I drilled multiple realities. Phase 2 went everywhere with me. The Axiom, the Idol Synergy, Zen, Phase 3, both of the UFOs. I mean, Rubicons, Ordnance C4, IQs, like High Roads, you name it, I've tried it. It was not, that's the biggest thing I can say is this was not for lack of trying on the Storm side. I didn't, if I could find a way to get the shapes that I wanted within the Storm catalog, I would have, and I would still be on staff with Storm today. I felt like I couldn't, I felt like it wasn't there, and that was kind of what prompted this whole conversation in the first place. Zen and Axiom Pearl, 2 balls I give 5 or 6 when I feel like I threw a good shot. Yes, I felt like that quite a bit, especially with the Zen. Actually, it kind of reminds me of the Dark Code to a certain extent, where it's absurdly strong for a shiny ball and how much it hooks. It's great when it worked, but when it didn't, it forced me into some weird angles and a lot of funny leaves, and so that was kind of not very fun to deal with. I think I saw something earlier about the ripcord. Let's see if I can get to that real quick. Ripcord velocity thoughts. I agree. The way I drilled mine made it angular. Doesn't fit where I'm bowling now. Yes. And I drilled my velocity a little bit slower intentionally because it looked like pin up. It was just too obnoxiously quick on friction for what I was trying to accomplish for that kind of strongish but still more responsive type of ball in my bag. And ironically enough, that's now being occupied by a pin-up Venom recoil because I'm weird apparently. Yeah, I'm not completely giving up on the velocity yet. It's a beautiful ball going down the lane. It's very fun to throw. I do want to try some more surface on it, see if that'll kind of blend it out and help get the shape in a more usable window, but I'm not stressing over it too much, if that makes sense. My chief concern from day one of resigning was I wanted to get a tournament ready bag. Like a core that I could get back to a grab and go core that I trust, that I can take everywhere with me, and that I know how to use, and that I can get it done, get the job done on pretty much any situation that comes up, and then it's just filling out the fringes from there. So, angles get too steep, miss the head pin. Yeah, yep, that's the amount of like 2, 4, 8, 10, 3, 6, 9, 10 type of reaction that I've had is that's something I don't like dealing with in the slightest. And so that was kind of what I wanted to get away from. Even with the equipment that I was carrying around, it was looking towards that smoother stuff. Oh gosh, he lost multiple tires. Yikes. So yeah. Let's see, what else? I think that's most of the older stuff. I just saw one other question. Blending on all patterns, answered that. Already answered that. Biddle, any other Brunswick balls I'm looking at? Not at the moment. There's a couple that I'm kind of vaguely looking at, but it's very much like I'm happy with my bag right now. And that was always number one, was get to a tournament ready bag. The Intel Pearl ST I've been very happy with since I drilled it on Wednesday. I'm expecting, honestly, I'm going to throw it quite a bit tonight at this tournament, because this is a pretty high friction center where this is actually the place where I used that 2000 grit IQ Emerald to win the Southeast Heavyweight belt. It's this exact building. So it's those like cleaner rolly balls that don't miss the spot. That's what strikes a lot in here. So I'm expecting that Intel Pearl SE should look pretty good in here. The Obsession Tour is on the would like to try list. This looks like just a can't miss ball from the catalog right now. And then maybe something else. I don't feel a pressing need to drill another shiny ASIM because I have a UFO alert that I really, really like, and it barely sees any use even with me really liking it. So that's, if I do drill something else, I'm probably looking at like the I always forget the name of it. It's the big shiny hybrid ASIM from Track. Strata Hybrid, that's what it is. Either that or maybe the Legion Pearl. Those have both looked pretty good, and in talking with friends of mine who know the catalog pretty well, they think that those would be decent options for me as well. Other than that, like, I found a Supra on Facebook last week. Got that sitting at home. Not really sure when I'm going to drill it. If the Intel Pearl SE had failed, I probably would have been looking to either that, or I've got, I want to bet and I have a Supra Enzo on the way as well. So I probably would have looked to one of those as my step down ball from the shock, but Intel Pearl SE seems to be it. So I'm going to stick with that for now. So both of the Supras are going to chill. There's not really a whole lot else super interesting right now across all of the brands. Honestly, I feel a pressing need to drill. The Trend 2 is one that does look pretty exciting. NRG Hybrid is a cover that I've had a ton of success with in the past. Combine that with a core that's kind of in between the Trend and the High Road cores, and that could be really interesting. So I'll probably end up drilling one of those once it comes out and I'll see what it does. But other than that, like, I just want to bowl. Like, I just want to go out and throw strikes and have fun. And succeed everywhere I go. But I feel like I'm able to put in a position to have a chance to succeed far more often now. And just to able to go out, keep things simple, beat up pocket. I know I can create hits with with the natural power that I create, and just go out and have fun. And that's, I don't know if this is like, so for those of you who don't know, I'm a professional statistician by day. That's my educational background, and my 9 to 5 is I work as a statistical consultant for a big company in the Raleigh area. And one thing that we learned, Statistics 101 in college at NC State, was correlation does not imply causation. That is to say, you know, if two variables shift in the same direction, that doesn't necessarily mean one is causing the other. And so, while I have been having more fun the past month or so, since I went into free agency, you know, I don't think that's the complete reason why. I think I'm in a better head. I've been working a lot on kind of getting myself in a better headspace while I'm bowling and being able to. All right, are we back? Are we back? All right, I think we're back. Sorry about that. There's not normally as much of an issue with dead zones on I-40. That's weird. Anyways, what I was saying was, like, in a headspace right now in a place with my equipment, with my lane lay, where I can just kind of go out and have fun. And I'm still learning kind of some of the nuances of kind of how to approach transition management now that I'm playing the blend a lot more than the friction, if that makes sense. So it's definitely kind of shifting my eyes a little bit in terms of how I'm looking for transition management, but I'm able to just go out and have fun and learn stuff, and that's kind of what I want to do right now. So yeah, big deviate ball, oh shoot, the Hellraiser Blaze, right Josh? The one that looks sort of like a Forged Flare visually, that's like black, orange, and yellow, and take it out of the box. That actually reminds me a little bit of a Crux Prime, honestly, just with how it shapes. It's got that same kind of idea of this like really heavy rolling, but still climbing and doesn't quit type of shape. But I see zero need for a ball in my bag right now that is stronger that reads sooner than my VIP Affliction. And if I do need that, I'll just take my Crux Prime and hit it with a 2000 pad, and I'm off to the races. Like, and that's the nice thing, to be able to have that flexibility. So yeah, just kind of, if I have something that's getting the job done and does what I need it to do, then I'm more than content to keep it in my bag, and if not, then I'll drill whatever I need to in order to make that work. Biddle, favorite ball since free agency and least favorite. I'm going to add a third one in there, biggest surprise. Favorite ball? Venom Shock. I mean, that's the one that I've made the most money with by a mile. It is just because of how it reads the lane. It's one of those balls that I'm always going to get to it somewhere in the course of a block. If the lanes are hooking more, then it's one that I'll look at on the fresh. If there's more of just a little more wet dry, then I can just kind of shim it through the puddle. And if I need something a little bit weaker but can still play the puddle, then it lets me do that. If the lanes get really cliffed and I need to circle the lane more, I can get left, get around it, throw it slower, and it doesn't quit. It can hook it can strike off the gutter. It can strike from shimming it to the 12 board. There's not a whole lot it can't do when it's in window. So that's been my favorite. Least favorite, I'm probably going to have to say the Fatal Venom, to be honest. I talked about this earlier. I'm not sure if you were around when I did. It's too slow for how clean it is, essentially. It's very, very good at letting me stand on top of complete dirt, and it doesn't hook too much. But the downside of that is the usage window for that ball is basically only times where I can't get my Venom Shock down the lane. Which that's going to happen when I'm looking at 5th arrow already. And if I'm that deep, then I need something that's more responsive down lane so I can actually drive through the pins than what the Fatal Venom gives me. The Ripcord Velocity, I don't want to say I don't like it, but it hasn't blown me away. I think in terms of delta from initial expectations to where I sit now, that's the most negative of the lot. This still looks like a really cool ball, and I see it striking, I'm like, holy moly, that looks amazing. But I also look at it in my own hands, and I can see what it's doing, I can see how it's shaping, and I can also kind of understand at the same time why I don't like it as much. But again, it's not one that I'm completely giving up on just yet. Biggest delta on the other side from expectations initially to where I am now is the VIP Affliction. I had seen a little bit of it. I knew it was a pretty good ball, but it was admittedly a bit of a stab in the dark with that one, of looking for a stronger, smoother, a smoother, more blendy complement to my Ghost. And I think the Affliction is more of a trap ball than anything else in my bag, as strange as that sounds, because I love throwing it, but I have to be careful that it's not reading the lane too early and blending it too much to the point of not being able to get through the pins properly. I'm getting a little better at seeing that properly, but that's the one where I have to make sure that I don't use that when I shouldn't more than any other ball in the bag. So that's kind of been the learning experience there. Intel Pearl SE has been a lot of fun. I obviously haven't thrown it a ton. I just drilled it on Wednesday nights. But that's so far so good there as well. Also tested out the new Venom recoil some this morning on Chromium, and that one seems to be perfectly in window with where I wanted that ball to fit, so I think I'm going to be good to go on that front as well. I'm expecting once I get the cover broken in on the recoil, that's probably going to be one that sees a ton of use from me, especially on higher friction surfaces where I don't have as much volume to have to get through, but I need something to roll a little more than the shock does. So, still drilling my own stuff. Yes, I have I've got a toolbox with all my own drill bits and everything in it, and I got a couple different friends who have drill presses in various places, and they have said yes, use my stuff whenever you need to. So I pretty much just roll in with a ball in a box and my drill bits, and I just use their press, their vacuum, and their little circular disc sander doohickey to buzz out the holes, and I'm good to go. So that's been it. It is fun to be able to drill my own stuff. It's definitely made this a little bit easier with this transition, because I have drilled, 11 or 12 bowling balls in the last 5 weeks. So a little bit of overkill, but it's how it is sometimes. So let's see, where am I right now? Okay, just getting to Greensboro. Cool. So not really all that structured of a talk, but that's kind of been my journey so far with free agency. Looking back, I definitely don't regret making the decision. I think I made the right decision. I think I've gotten better from this, and I'm definitely, every time I go out on the lanes now, I feel like I'm improving, I'm getting better, and I'm giving myself a better chance to succeed. I know that means I won't succeed every time. Even just last night in league, subbing at a place where I haven't bowled super well, I shot, what did I shoot, 670, I think? Like 30 clean for 670. And I was honestly really happy with that. Like, did I strike a ton? No. Is it up to what I would like to think is my usual standard? No. But I know that I'm not going to have 100% success everywhere I go. And I was able to manage the lanes pretty well, keep myself in play, made all my spares, obviously, and I got to have fun bowling with my friends, and that's honestly what it's all about. And that's my plan for tonight, too, at this tournament, is, yes, I want to beat everybody's faces in and walk out with a lot more money than I walk in with, but at the end of the day, I get to go have fun bowling with a friend of mine, and that's a win. So that's kind of, it's not that I wasn't able to do that before being on staff, but it doesn't feel like I have to search, like I have to press much now to be able to do that, and that's honestly kind of freeing. So yeah, I got a few more minutes before I get to checking into my hotel before I go bowling. So yeah, any other questions? Looks like there's 10, 11ish people in here. If you have any other questions, definitely fire away. Still got most of my coffee left, so I'm going to work on this for a minute. But if I think of anything else, I'll spit that out. And if y'all have any questions, fire away too. One really interesting thing, and this kind of caught me off guard, is this is going to sound really, really, really weird when I say it. My Jackal Ghost has a ton of function overlap with my Phase 2. Like, a whole lot. That doesn't make sense on paper. The Ghost is a big standard asymmetric. It's like what's the core, like 248, 054, 013 or something like that. Versus the Phase 2 is a symmetrical, like full-blown symmetrical, so it doesn't have an end diff. I think you might have caught this if you watched some of my testing stream from a few weeks back, but I can play them almost on top of each other across the entire lane, which is a little odd to think about. I think that's just kind of the differences. Obviously, the cores are different, but the covers do respond a little differently to friction between those two. The Ghost is a little bit more aggressive of a core, but a little more blendy of a cover, versus the Phase 2 is a little more blendy, rolly on the core side, but a little more responsive of a cover on friction, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the give and take there, but the end result is they're very, very similar in a lot of respects. So essentially, like if I need more kick from a Phase 2 type ball, that's when I'm throwing the Ghost. And if I need that Phase 2 blend, then I'm usually looking at the Venom Shock, unless I need a lot of early traction, in which case I throw the VIP Affliction, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's been kind of a little bit of a shift, is like the Phase 2 workhorse. Like I've got essentially 3 different balls that have various elements of functionality of that in them, with my Affliction, my Ghost, and my Shock. That kind of lets me use that idea a lot more, but I'll have a little more specialization within that idea for different situations. So that was a shift in how I build my bag that I didn't really see coming, but has worked out very, very well so far. Type of equipment to use for HPL high friction. Kind of varies based on the center, honestly. A lot of the HPL places where I've bowled recently actually put out a ton of volume. So yes, there is friction to manage down lane, but that's kind of a secondary issue, if that makes sense, because the bigger thing to manage in those situations is the puddle and making sure your balls start soon enough and blending out the wet dry. So like the Bowlerama, the place where the main host center for Battle Bowl this year, where I was last weekend, I think I used my Crux Prime, my VIP Affliction, and my Venom Recoil almost the entire time in that building. Very, very early, focusing very much on the super early, super blendy stuff. But I'm able to do that because even though there is a pretty good amount of down lane friction in that building, the thing that all those balls have in common is they don't like lock up and roll out when they see a lot of friction. They blend and roll and continue down lane. And so they all give me kind of that ability to do that. The place where I bowled my Wednesday league before the first frame up in Henderson, where I've done a lot of my testing videos recently, that's also very high friction, very dirty lanes, but they put out a decent amount of volume. Their house shot is, I think it's Kegel Stone Street, but they just made it longer by a foot. So it's 43 feet instead of 42 or something like that. It's the same idea. Sorry about that, guys. That is the third disconnect I've had on the stream. That is highly annoying. Anyways, Wednesday League House from this summer is also very high friction lanes before the first frame up in Henderson. So they're the kind of, I'm playing the lanes pretty similarly no matter where I go at this point. As I'm focusing on playing this, playing the puddle, playing the middle of the lane, playing the blend instead of playing the friction and playing the shape, if that makes sense. So I'm looking to get my balls started early and blend out down lane and then just figure out how to get it through the pins from there. And that makes my lane play differences pair to pair, day to day, center to center a lot less substantial. So in the case of the Wednesday house, I use my, pretty much depending on how tight they are down lane, I either use my Ghost or my Shock there, almost exclusively. Trying to think of other places I've bowled with HPLs. Oh yeah, AMF All-Star out here in the Greensboro area. Bowled a tournament here 2 weekends ago. I'm trying to remember what I used there. I think I used my Affliction on the fresh and then my Venom Shock plus Affliction on the burn. Again, same idea. It's just the really, really super blendy stuff. But again, I'm fighting the same issue there. Is on those really high friction lanes, when they're putting out volume, I'm fighting the cliff more than anything else. And so I'm trying to find whatever way I can to blend that and get pocket control first, and then figure out how to get the hits second. And that's kind of the sequence of how that plays out. So, yeah, I hope that answers that question, Jesse. Hope that makes sense. Got a couple more miles before I get to the hotel, so I guess last call for questions, and then I'm going to go on ahead and call it a day. While I'm thinking about it too, I am going to have, I'm going to do another what's in the bag type of live commentary video. You'll remember I did one of those, it probably would have been like October, November timeframe last year. Obviously my bag is just a wee bit different now than it was then. But I think once I actually get on land and kind of show you guys how everything relates together, it'll make a little more sense. So I definitely want to put that together. Actually, if I had my tripod, do I have my tripod? No, I don't have my tripod with me. Dang it. Yeah, I might try and put that together while I'm out here in Greensboro if I can figure something out for that. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah, in the interim though, that's kind of been a hour and change rambling commentary on what I've experienced so far in free agency. It's definitely been a very positive experience. Like I said before, I've learned a lot. I've gotten better as a result, and I think I am better every time I step on the lanes. And that was the big thing for me, is I always, like, I have this constant drive, this competitive desire to get better every time I'm out there. And figuring out how to manage that has been a little bit of a bugaboo mentally, of kind of accepting that I'm not going to be my best version of myself every time I'm out there, but I just want to be constantly improving and figuring, even if I don't improve on a day, if I learn what I can improve for next time, that's still a positive. So anyways, yeah, I'm almost to my hotel, so I'm going to go on ahead and sign off for now. Yeah, absolutely, Jesse, glad that helped. Yeah, I will have some more content coming in the next few weeks. I don't think I have anything going on next weekend, so I'm going to try and get that what's in the bag video out in the next week or so. I also want to do a video kind of talking through the benefits and the pitfalls of shiny ASIM. It's a very popular category for a lot of bowlers, but it's one that I've concluded that I personally don't really need anymore. And so kind of the chance to show y'all what that looks like, I think is going to be pretty fun and informative and educational, and kind of explain a little bit of that shift in my bag and how I manage things. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, though. I hope you all have enjoyed this. As always, if you have any questions, drop me a note down in the comments, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. Yeah, time to check into my hotel, get some food, and then go murder some bowling pins and have fun. So until next time, thank you all for hanging out, and yeah, good luck and good bowling. Peace. Come here.